space, a brand new chart. For the head and for the heart, it's your journey, your tools.
Welcome back to the deep dive.
Okay, let's just jump right in with something maybe relatable. Why is it that sometimes in a relationship you feel like you're constantly chasing something, like an intimacy that just never quite lands?
Or the flip side, right, where things start getting close, getting real, maybe a bit demanding, and suddenly you have this urge to run.
Exactly. Those cycles, the push and the pull, that feeling of desperate pursuit sometimes, or just this reflexive withdrawal, it often feels like it's got a mind of its own.
Yeah, almost inevitable.
And it rarely seems to be about the actual thing you're arguing about, like, who left the dishes out?
That feeling, that sense of, wow, this simple argument feels like a huge threat that points directly to what we're really digging into today, attachment theory.
Right.
This whole framework, it started with John Bowlby, got refined by Mary Ainsworth, and it basically explains how the psychological blueprint for your adult relationships, it was pretty much written down in those first few years of life. That's it. So we've gone through, well, a stack of the foundational research, looked at the neuroscience behind it, and how it all plays out practically. Our mission here isn't just to list off terms like secure, anxious, avoidant.
Yeah.
We want to pull out the really actionable stuff, how your internal working model, your IWM, how that's maybe dictating your choices, your reactions now.
And the core promise, really, for you listening, is that getting a handle on this blueprint, it's probably the most powerful shortcut to understanding yourself, understanding those relationship patterns. It can help you stop repeating the same old script and maybe start renovating your own emotional architecture. So let's trace this blueprint back to its roots. Where did it all begin?
Okay, so section 1, the foundational blueprint. When Bowlby started this work, mid-20th century, the thinking, especially from behaviorism, was pretty basic.
Utilitarian, really.
Right. The idea was a baby loves its mother because, well, she feeds it. Simple as that. A secondary thing that happens because of the food.
Yeah, a consequence of getting your physiological needs met. Like, love is a bonus you get from the food provider.
And Bowlby just completely turned that on its head.
Totally. He argued that this drive, this need to form close emotional bonds, it's not secondary, it's not a result of getting fed, it's primary. It's biologically hardwired into us, essential for survival.
Like breathing.
Pretty much, yeah. He put it on that fundamental level. Attachment is as basic as breathing.
So, okay, why? Why would nature make emotional connection so incredibly important? What's the evolutionary logic there?
Think about it from a survival perspective, way back. An infant, completely vulnerable, who instinctively stays close to a reliable caregiver.
Safer, much safer.
Exactly. Safer from predators, safer from the elements, more likely to get help when sick. So, seeking proximity, especially when you feel scared or distressed, that became the sort of set goal of the whole attachment system.
It's our built-in safety mechanism.
It is. That drive to connect kept us alive.
And the really definitive proof that it's about comfort and safety, not just food, that came from Harry Harlow's experiments, right? The rhesus monkeys, which are, well, famous and also kind of controversial.
Very controversial ethically looking back, but scientifically, they were pivotal. They gave the theory solid empirical ground.
So what did he do exactly?
He separated infant monkeys from their mothers and gave them 2 surrogate options. One was just a wire frame, cold metal, but it had a bottle with milk.
Utility.
Right. The other was covered in soft, warm terry cloth, really comforting texture, but no food.
So the choice was stark. Sustenance or comfort.
And the results were, well, maybe not surprising if you've ever held a distressed baby, but they flew in the face of the old theories.
What happened?
The monkeys overwhelmingly chose the cloth mother. They spent almost all their time clinging to her, like 22 hours a day. When something scary happened, they ran straight to the cloth mother for safety.
And the wire mother?
They only went to her for a quick feed, then right back to the cloth one. It was just undeniable proof. The bond isn't built on calories. It's built on what Harlow called nurturance and responsiveness. Warmth, contact, feeling safe.
That emotional connection is the primary driver.
Yes, cemented that idea.
Okay, so building on that, Bowlby introduced this key concept, monotropy. His initial idea was pretty strong, wasn't it? That we have this innate need for one main attachment figure.
Yeah, typically the mother in his original writing, and he felt this bond was qualitatively different, more crucial than any other.
Why so focused on just one?
Well, you have to remember the context. He was heavily influenced by studies of kids in institutions, like during and after World War II, who often lacked any consistent caregiver. So emphasizing one primary figure gave theoretical weight to the absolute necessity of having someone reliable.
A central anchor.
Exactly. And it also kind of fit the cultural ideas of the time about intense mother-infant bonding. This one figure was meant to be the ultimate secure base and safe haven.
But that idea has evolved, hasn't it? Modern research adds some important nuance, especially for families today.
Oh, absolutely. The core need for a primary secure attachment figure is still seen as universal, but the source, that's much more flexible now. Research clearly shows it's not about gender or biology.
It's about the care itself.
Right, it's the quality of the care that matters most. Consistent responsiveness, sensitive interaction. That's far more important than just hours logged or who's biologically related. So a father, a grandparent, two dads, two moms, whoever provides that consistent, attuned care can be that primary figure.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about the timing? Bowlby also had strong ideas about when this bond needed to form. He talked about a critical period.
Initially, yeah, he was quite rigid. He proposed this window, like the first 2.5 to 3 years, and even said trying to form that bond later was almost useless if delayed.
Wow, that's pretty definitive. And maybe alarming for adoptive parents or others?
Extremely, and thankfully that idea was softened over time. We now talk about a sensitive period, generally up to about age 5.
So, sensitive, not critical. What's the difference?
It acknowledges that while forming that primary bond is optimal and much easier early on, it's not strictly impossible later. The brain is more plastic early on, so the wiring happens more readily. Forming secure attachments later in childhood, or even changing insecure patterns in adulthood through corrective experiences, it is possible. It's just harder work because you're working against that initial wiring.
Got it. And the consequences of not forming that bond or having it severely disrupted during that sensitive time, that leads to his maternal deprivation hypothesis, right?
Yes, that was the core prediction. If that primary attachment is continually disrupted or just never forms properly during that sensitive window, it leads to serious long-term problems. We're talking cognitive delays, difficulty regulating emotions, significant social issues.
It's the lack of a reliable foundation that causes the damage.
Precisely. The failure to build that basic trust in others and in your own worthiness.
Okay, so we have the evolutionary drive, the timing.
Yeah.
Let's get to the core mechanism, the internal working model, the IWM. This feels like the real engine of the whole theory.
It really is. The IWM is the lasting legacy of all those early interactions. Think of it as a cognitive framework, a mental blueprint. It gets built piece by piece from thousands and thousands of tiny moments with your caregiver.
And it answers those two fundamental questions.
Yeah, basically, am I worthy of love and care? And are other people generally reliable and trustworthy when I need them?
And this isn't just a passive set of beliefs. It actively shapes how you see the world, how you act in relationships.
Absolutely. It acts like a filter. If your caregiver was consistently responsive, warm, available, you develop a positive IWM. I'm okay, I'm worthy, and people are generally good and dependable. That's the bedrock of security.
And if the care was inconsistent, or rejecting, or scary,
Then you develop a negative IWM. Maybe I'm not worthy, something's wrong with me, or others are unreliable, they'll leave, or even others are dangerous. And here's the crucial part. This negative blueprint creates this powerful confirmation bias.
meaning you kind of seek out proof that your negative beliefs are true.
Exactly. You might unconsciously choose partners who treat you poorly because it feels familiar, confirming your sense of unworthiness. Or you might misread ambiguous cues, like a partner needing space, as definitive proof of rejection, and then react in a way that actually pushes them away, creating the outcome you feared most. The IWM constantly tries to make reality fit its expectations.
Wow. Okay, so that's the blueprint.
Hmm.
Now let's look at how a healthy attachment actually functions day to day. Section 2, the dynamic dance. You mentioned the caregiver needs to balance two key roles, secure base and safe haven.
Yeah, this dual function is so important. The caregiver has to be both the launch pad for independence and the port in a storm. Get that balance right, and the child learns to navigate the world with confidence.
Let's start with the secure base. This is about exploring.
It is. The secure base is the anchor that gives the child the confidence to explore their world, to play, to learn, to interact with others. Knowing that caregiver is reliably there, accessible, provides the psychological safety net needed to take those risks.
They check back, though, right? It's not like they just forget the caregiver exists.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You see it all the time. A toddler playing, they'll glance back, maybe make eye contact, or even briefly return for a touch base before venturing out again. They're just confirming the anchor is still secure.
And this leads to that really interesting paradox, the one that often confuses people in adult relationships, that true independence actually grows out of secure dependence.
This is such a key insight from the theory. Our culture often celebrates this idea of the rugged individual who needs no one. Attachment theory says, hang on, that's not how healthy autonomy develops.
Yeah.
Knowing you can securely depend on someone, that's what frees you up to be brave, to explore, to become your own person.
You don't have to constantly worry about falling apart because you know there's a safe place to land.
Precisely. If you know your anchor holds, you can sail further from shore.
So translating that to adult relationships, what does that look like? Healthy interdependence.
In a secure adult partnership, knowing you can rely on your partner emotionally, practically, that's what actually empowers both people. It allows them to pursue their careers, have their own friends, develop their own interests. The strong bond fuels two thriving, separate lives rather than forcing them into some kind of merged, codependent blob.
Okay, so that's the launching pad. But what about when things go wrong? That's the safe haven function.
Right. The safe haven is who the child turns to when they're distressed, when they're scared, hurt, sick. Exploration stops, the attachment system kicks into high gear, and the goal becomes proximity, getting back to that safe person.
And the caregiver's job then is?
To welcome that approach, to provide comfort, soothe the distress, and help the child regulate back down to a state of calm, to restore that feeling of safety.
And that process of being soothed by someone else, that's crucial for learning how to soothe yourself later on, isn't it?
Absolutely critical. When a child is consistently comforted when they're upset, they internalize that experience. They learn, okay, feeling bad is manageable, I can recover. This repeated co-regulation with the caregiver literally builds the neural pathways for self-regulation, for self-soothing. It helps them handle stress better throughout life.
It sounds like a beautifully designed system, this back and forth. The reciprocal dance, as the sources call it, is not just one way.
Not at all. The infant isn't passive. They come equipped with social releasers, crying, smiling, clinging, even just making eye contact. These are powerful, innate signals designed specifically to capture attention and trigger caregiving behavior in adults.
And adults have a complementary system.
Yes, the caregiving system. There seems to be an innate drive in adults to respond to these signals, especially from infants. Think about how most people react instinctively to a baby crying.
You want to help.
Exactly. And the quality of the attachment bond, the IWM that gets built, it all hinges on how well this dance works consistently. Does the infant signal a need? Does the caregiver read it accurately and respond sensitively, appropriately, and reasonably quickly? When that happens reliably, trust builds.
Okay, so Bowlby lays out the theory. How do we get to the point of actually measuring these different bond qualities? That brings us to Mary Ainsworth, Section 3, the strange situation.
Right. Ainsworth's contribution was massive because she took attachment from a compelling theory to something observable, measurable, scientific. She created the strange situation procedure.
The lab test for attachment.
Pretty much. It's a standardized 20-minute observation, kind of a laboratory microcosm designed for infants around, say, 9 to 18 months old. The whole point is to gently activate their attachment system through mild controlled stress.
Because you need to see how they react under pressure, not just when everything's fine.
Exactly. You need to see the system in action.
So walk us through it. How does it work? How does it create that stress?
It's a sequence of 8 short episodes in a room the baby hasn't been in before. It involves the caregiver, the baby, and a friendly stranger. The stress ramps up gradually. The stranger enters, the caregiver leaves briefly, the baby is left with the stranger, then totally alone for a moment, and crucially, there are 2 reunion episodes where the caregiver comes back into the room.
And you said earlier the key isn't necessarily how much the baby cries when the parent leaves, because most secure babies do cry.
Right. Separation distress is normal.
The really telling part is the reunion behavior. What happens when the caregiver returns?
That's the money shot. Because the reunion reveals the child's expectation, their internal working model in action. What do they anticipate will happen when they seek comfort? Do they expect to be welcomed and soothed? Or do they expect to be ignored or rebuffed or maybe even something frightening? That strategy they use upon reunion is what Ainsworth used to classify the attachment styles.
Okay, let's break down those classifications. What did she find?
The most common, the benchmark for healthy attachment, is secure, type B. These infants used the caregiver as a secure base to explore. They were usually upset when the caregiver left again. Normal. But the key is the reunion. They actively sought contact, maybe reached up to be held, were quickly and easily soothed, and then, importantly, went back to playing.
They expected comfort, got it, and felt safe again.
Precisely. Their IWM says, "My caregiver is reliable when I'm distressed." This was around 70% in Ainsworth's original North American samples, though percentages vary across culture.
Okay, then the insecure styles. First, insecure-avoidant, type A. About
Yeah.
15% or so.
Yeah. These infants often looked quite independent. They explored readily, maybe didn't seem that bothered when the caregiver left. Sometimes the stranger could comfort them almost as easily, but the diagnostic part was the reunion.
What do they do?
They actively avoided or ignored the caregiver, turned away, looked down, busied themselves with a toy. It looked like indifference, but it wasn't.
It was a strategy.
A powerful defensive deactivation strategy. These infants had likely learned through repeated experience that showing distress or seeking comfort didn't work well. Maybe the caregiver was consistently unresponsive or rejecting of neediness, so they learned to suppress their attachment signals to avoid the pain of expected rejection. It's a way of saying, see, I don't need you anyway.
Wow. Okay. Then the other mean insecure type, insecure ambivalent or resistant, type C, also around 15%. These seem almost the opposite of avoidant.
They are. These infants often showed intense attachment anxiety even before separation. They tended to cling, were wary of exploring. When the caregiver left, they were usually intensely distressed.
And the reunion.
That's where the ambivalent or resistant part comes in. Upon reunion, they'd seek proximity, maybe cry to be picked up, but then they'd simultaneously resist the comfort. They might arch their back, push away, tick, or angrily bat at a toy offered by the caregiver.
Seeking closeness and fighting it at the same time. Why?
It reflects the inconsistency they likely experienced. Their caregiver might have been available and responsive sometimes, but unavailable or intrusive other times. So their IWM is full of uncertainty. I desperately need you, but I'm angry because I can't rely on you, and I don't know if you'll get it right this time either. They can't be easily soothed because they don't trust the comfort will be reliable or attuned.
That sounds exhausting for everyone involved.
It really is.
And there was a fourth category added later, right? The one that's maybe the most concerning. Disorganized, type D.
Yes, identified later by Main and Solomon. This category captures the infants who didn't seem to have any consistent, organized strategy for dealing with the stress. It's often linked to experiences where the caregiver is frightening or frightened themselves. Maybe abuse, neglect, unresolved trauma in the caregiver.
The caregiver is both the source of safety and the source of fear.
Exactly. Which creates an impossible paradoxical situation for the infant's attachment system. So on reunion, you see bizarre contradictory behaviors, freezing, rocking back and forth, dazed expressions, approaching the caregiver, then suddenly moving away or falling to the floor. Their system is essentially overwhelmed and breaks down. There's no coherent way to cope.
Okay, that's heavy. But understanding these infant patterns is crucial because, as you said, they don't just disappear.
Yeah.
Section 4. The 4 adult attachment styles. These early strategies show remarkable continuity, right? They become the foundation for how we navigate love and connection as adults.
They really do. Adult attachment is usually conceptualized along 2 dimensions. First, attachment anxiety. How much do you worry about rejection, about abandonment? Are you preoccupied with the relationship? That's the anxiety dimension.
Okay, and a second.
Attachment avoidance.
Yep.
How uncomfortable are you with closeness, intimacy, depending on others? Do you value independence above all else and try to keep emotional distance? That's the avoidance dimension.
And where you fall on those 2 high or low anxieties, high or low avoidance, gives us the 4 main adult styles.
Precisely.
Let's start with the goal. The secure style. Low anxiety, low avoidance.
Right. Secure adults generally had that good enough caregiving. Their IWM is positive about both self and others. I'm worthy of love, and other people are generally trustworthy and responsive.
And how does that play out in relationships?
They're comfortable with intimacy, with closeness. They can depend on others and let others depend on them, but they're also comfortable with autonomy, with having their own space and giving their partner space. They communicate needs directly, trust easily, handle conflict constructively. It's that healthy interdependence we talked about. They just navigate relationships with more ease.
Okay, now for the first insecure style, the one driven by that fear of being left. The anxious preoccupied style. High anxiety, low avoidance.
Yeah, these individuals crave closeness. They are low on avoidance, but they are high on anxiety, constantly worried about the relationship's stability.
Where does that usually come from?
Often from that inconsistent, unpredictable caregiving we mentioned with the ambivalent infants. Sometimes needs were met, sometimes not. So the IWM is often negative self. Am I good enough? Do I deserve love? Combined with a kind of positive but anxious view of others. You're wonderful. You have the power to validate me, but you might leave me.
So their core fear is abandonment.
Deeply. Rejection feels catastrophic. So in relationships, they tend to be hypervigilant, always scanning for signs of trouble, needing constant reassurance. They can sometimes come across as clingy or demanding because they're using what researchers call hyperactivating strategies.
Hyperactivating, meaning they ramp up their attachment behaviors to get attention or reassurance.
Exactly. It's an attempt to close the perceived distance. This can look like excessive texting or calling, needing to know where the partner is constantly, focusing intensely on relationship problems, sometimes creating drama to elicit a response, or engaging in protest behavior, like threatening to leave not because they want to, but hoping the partner will beg them to stay.
It's all aimed at pulling the partner closer, driven by that fear.
Right. Their attachment system is easily triggered and stays activated.
Okay, now contrast that with the style that finds all that closeness suffocating. The dismissive avoidance style. Low anxiety, high avoidance.
These individuals pride themselves on their independence and self-sufficiency. They are uncomfortable with too much closeness, with vulnerability, with depending on others,
And the origins.
often linked to caregiving that was consistently rejecting or emotionally distant. Maybe their needs for comfort were dismissed, or they were pushed towards independence too early. Big boys don't cry, that kind of thing. So they learn to rely only on themselves.
What's their IWM like?
It's often the mirror image of the anxious style. Positive self, I'm strong, capable, I don't need anyone, combined with a negative view of others. People are needy, unreliable, demanding, they'll just let you down or try to control you.
So their core fear isn't abandonment, it's...
Loss of independence. Being controlled, engulfed, smothered by the needs of others. Intimacy feels threatening to their sense of self.
So how do they keep people at bay? What are their deactivating strategies?
These are tactics to suppress attachment needs and maintain distance. It could be things like focusing on a partner's flaws to justify not getting closer, prioritizing work or hobbies over the relationship, being emotionally reserved or shut down, difficulty expressing feelings or responding to a partner's vulnerability, valuing logic over emotion, sometimes abruptly ending relationships when they start to feel too serious or demanding. They basically turn down the volume on their own attachment system.
Keeping connection at arm's length.
Exactly, because distance feels safer than vulnerability.
Okay, and finally, the style that seems caught between those two poles. The fearful avoidance style. High anxiety and high avoidance. This maps onto the disorganized infant category, right?
Yes, it's often considered the adult outcome of disorganized attachment, frequently stemming from frightening or traumatic early experiences where the caregiver was a source of both comfort and fear.
So their IWM is negative about both self and others.
That's the prevailing model. Negative self, I'm unworthy, flawed, damaged, and negative others. People are dangerous, untrustworthy, they will inevitably hurt me.
Which leads to this core conflict.
A real bind. They deeply desire connection and intimacy, high anxiety, but they are simultaneously terrified of it because they expect to be hurt, high avoidance. They want love, but they don't trust it, and they don't feel worthy of it.
So in relationships, you get that confusing push-pull dynamic.
Very much so. They might actively seek out closeness, seem intensely invested, and then suddenly withdraw or even sabotage the relationship when intimacy deepens because the fear becomes overwhelming. It can be volatile, chaotic. They might swing between desperately needing reassurance like the anxious type and defensively pushing people away like the dismissive type. It's a very painful internal conflict.
Okay, understanding the styles is one thing. Section 5, attachment in action. How do these styles actually show up in everyday communication and, crucially, during conflict? Let's start with bids for connection. Remind us what a bid is.
Right. A bid is basically any signal, verbal or nonverbal, that seeks attention, affection, support, or engagement from your partner. It can be big, like I really need to talk about something important, or tiny, like a sigh, a touch on the arm, or saying, look at that sunset.
Just an attempt to connect.
Yeah.
How do the different styles handle these? Secure first.
Secure partners are generally good at both making bids appropriately and, importantly, responding positively to their partner's bids, what John Gottman calls turning toward. They see bids as opportunities for connection. And crucially, if a bid is missed occasionally or if their partner needs space, they don't usually panic or take it personally. Their secure IWM allows them to trust the overall relationship.
Okay, but for the insecure styles, bids are much higher stakes. Anxious, preoccupied.
They tend to make frequent, sometimes urgent bids, often implicitly testing the partner's availability. Do you really love me? And because they fear abandonment, they're highly sensitive to missed bids. If a partner is distracted or tired or just needs some alone time and doesn't respond enthusiastically, the anxious person's alarm system goes off.
They interpret it as rejection.
Often, yes. It confirms their fear. This triggers their hyperactivating strategies, maybe getting demanding, tearful, accusatory, escalating the bid in an attempt to force a response and regain connection.
And the dismissive avoidant, how do they handle bids, making or receiving?
They tend to make fewer bids themselves, as needing connection feels vulnerable. And when their partner makes a bid, especially an emotional one, they often miss it, dismiss it, or respond in a minimizing way.
Why?
Because the bid can feel like a demand, an intrusion on their autonomy. They might change the subject, offer logical solutions instead of empathy, or just emotionally withdraw. Their deactivating strategies kick in to manage the perceived threat of closeness. Turning away from bids keeps intimacy at bay.
This sets things up pretty badly for conflict, doesn't it? If even simple bids are fraught, what happens when there's a real disagreement? You said conflict becomes a reenactment.
That's a really powerful way to understand it, especially for insecure couples. For someone with a secure attachment, conflict might be unpleasant, but it's usually seen as a problem to be solved together. For insecure styles, conflict often feels like a fundamental threat to their safety, triggering those old survival strategies.
So the argument about, say, finances isn't just about money.
Right. For the anxious person, if their avoidant partner withdraws during that argument, it doesn't just feel like they're avoiding the topic, it feels like abandonment. It echoes that childhood experience of the caregiver being unavailable in times of need.
And for the avoidant person, if their anxious partner gets louder, more emotional, demands they talk right now.
It doesn't just feel like they're upset, it feels suffocating, controlling, overwhelming. It mirrors that feeling of having their independence threatened or being engulfed by someone else's needs, which they learned early on to defend against.
So they're reacting to the past as much as the present.
Often more so, the current argument is just the stage for the old drama.
Let's look at the specific conflict styles linked to attachment. Secure.
Secure individuals tend to approach conflict constructively. They can regulate their emotions better so they don't get totally flooded. They use cooperative strategies, compromising, trying to understand the other's perspective, looking for win-win solutions. They can express their needs clearly but respectfully. They prioritize the health of the relationship even during disagreement.
Anxious style in conflict.
Escalation is common. It's often a fight response. They pursue the partner relentlessly, needing immediate resolution because the emotional distance feels unbearable. The language might become blaming or desperate. You always, you never. They have trouble self-soothing, so they need the partner to fix the bad feeling now. If pursuit doesn't work, they might flip to a fawn response, giving in completely, just to stop the conflict and restore closeness, even if it means sacrificing their own needs.
In the avoidant style.
Their go-to is often the flight response. Withdrawal. Stonewalling, just shutting down communication, minimizing the issue. It's not a big deal. Maybe physically leaving the situation. Or staying present but becoming emotionally vacant. The goal is to reduce the emotional intensity, regain control, and restore distance.
Put the anxious and avoidant styles together in a relationship, and you get that classic, painful push-pull dynamic. Can you walk us through how that cycle works?
Oh yeah, it's incredibly common and incredibly destructive. It's a cycle where each person's attempt to feel safe actually triggers the other person's deepest insecurity.
So, phase 1.
Anxious pursuit. The anxious partner senses some distance, maybe real or perceived. Their anxiety spikes. They start pushing for connection, for reassurance. Are you okay? What's wrong? We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
They might become more critical or demanding in their pursuit.
And the avoidant partner feels this pursuit as
Pressure, intrusion, criticism. It activates their defenses. So phase 2, avoidant withdrawal. They feel overwhelmed or controlled, so they pull back, they shut down emotionally, maybe get defensive, say, I can't talk about this right now, or literally leave the room. They're trying to protect their autonomy.
which, of course, is the worst possible thing for the anxious partner.
Exactly. The loop. The withdrawal confirms the anxious partner's core fear. C, you are abandoning me. This ramps up their anxiety and intensifies their pursuit. Maybe more tears, more anger, more demands.
And that intensified pursuit.
Confirms the avoidant partner's core belief. C, you are needy and demanding. I need to protect myself. which reinforces their need to withdraw further.
It's a perfect storm. Each person's self-protection strategy is the other person's trigger.
Precisely. They get locked in this painful dance, both feeling unseen, unheard, and deeply unsafe.
Okay, this paints a pretty clear picture of how these styles operate.
Yeah.
But it also raises the big question. Are we stuck with the style we developed? Section 6. The path to earned security.
Let's talk stability versus malleability. How fixed are these patterns?
Well, there's definitely a case for stability. IWMs tend to be stable because, as we said, they operate largely outside conscious awareness, and people often unconsciously choose situations and partners that fit their existing model. It feels familiar, even if it's painful. Longitudinal studies do show a fair amount of consistency over time.
There's hope.
Absolutely. Attachment styles are not set in stone. Research suggests maybe around 30%, perhaps even more, of adults actually change their attachment style over their lifetime. It exists on a spectrum, not in rigid boxes. We can move.
Although it might get harder as we get older, that idea of canalization. Yes, that theory suggests that these patterns tend to become more entrenched, more automatic with age, which highlights why adolescence and young adulthood can be such crucial periods for intervention. The pathways are a bit more flexible then. But change is still possible later. It just might take more conscious effort.
What kinds of things can prompt a change, either way?
Well, significant negative life events like a traumatic breakup, a major loss, betrayal, can unfortunately shift someone from secure towards insecurity. But the positive side is that corrective relational experiences are incredibly powerful agents of change.
What does that mean, a corrective experience?
It means having a significant relationship, often a long-term romantic partner, but it could also be a close friend, a mentor, or crucially, a therapist who consistently provides the opposite experience of what your negative IWM predicts. Someone who is reliable, who is responsive, who is emotionally available, who doesn't abandon you or engulf you when things get tough.
This relationship provides a new template.
Exactly. It directly challenges the old blueprint and offers concrete, lived evidence that secure connection is possible, gradually helping to rewire those expectations.
Which leads us to this really hopeful concept, earned security.
Yes. Earned secure individuals are people who definitely started out with insecure attachment patterns due to difficult early experiences, but through conscious effort, corrective experiences, therapy, self-reflection, they've managed to develop a secure way of relating in adulthood.
They've done the work and rewritten their script.
Pretty much. It's a powerful demonstration of resilience and the brain's capacity for change, for neuroplasticity.
So how does that healing happen on a deeper level? What's the mechanism?
A lot of it comes down to experiencing consistent emotional safety and co-regulation. Dr. Sue Johnson's ARE model from emotionally focused therapy really captures it. To heal, we need relationships where the other person is consistently accessible, available, present, responsive, attuned to our needs, validating, and engaged, emotionally invested.
ARE, accessible, responsive, engaged.
When you experience that reliably, over time, it starts to counteract the old model that says, people aren't there for me, or my needs are too much. It provides a felt sense of security.
And this isn't just a psychological shift, right? It actually changes the brain.
There's growing evidence for that, yes. Experiencing consistent safety in relationships can help regulate the nervous system. It can dampen the hyperreactivity of the amygdala, the brain's fear center that's often overactive in insecure attachment.
So you become less easily triggered into fight, flight, or freeze.
Right. And it seems to strengthen the connections to the prefrontal cortex, the part involved in reasoning, reflection, and impulse control. This gives you more capacity to pause, reflect, and choose a different response, rather than just reacting based on the old programming. You learn physiologically that connection can be safe.
So if someone achieves this earned security, how would we know? Is there a marker, a sign that the healing has really integrated?
One of the key markers identified in research, particularly by Mary Main, is achieving narrative coherence or narrative integration.
Meaning how they tell their story.
Exactly. It's the ability to talk about their childhood experiences, even very difficult or painful ones, in a way that is coherent, makes sense, is logical, balanced, acknowledges both good and bad complexity, and reflective, shows insight into how those experiences impacted them.
They've made sense of it. What does that actually look like?
It means they can distinguish between what actually happened and how it felt to them as a child. They might understand their parents' limitations or struggles without necessarily excusing harmful behavior. They can connect their past experiences to their present patterns. I withdraw because I learned early on that neediness wasn't safe. They're not stuck in denial, my childhood was perfect, nor are they overwhelmed and consumed by raw anger or pain when they talk about it.
They own the story, but the story doesn't own them anymore.
That's a great way to put it. They've processed it, integrated it, and can reflect on it without being derailed by it. That coherence is a strong indicator of earned security.
Okay, so let's get practical. For listeners who recognize themselves in the insecure patterns and want to move toward security, what are the strategies for growth? Let's start with professional help.
Therapy can be incredibly helpful, especially therapy specifically designed around attachment. Attachment-based therapy, for instance, really focuses on using the relationship between the therapist and client as a new, secure base experience.
Kind of a practice ground for secure relating.
In a way, yes. And for couples caught in those negative cycles, emotionally focused therapy, EFT, is incredibly effective. As you mentioned, studies show high success rates, like 70–75%, in helping couples move from distress to recovery. EFT directly targets that push-pull dynamic, helps partners understand the underlying attachment fears driving it, and guides them towards creating more secure, ARE-based interactions.
What about therapies that focus more on thoughts or trauma?
Absolutely relevant. Cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, can be very useful for identifying and challenging those negative core beliefs embedded in the IWM thoughts like, I'm unlovable, or people always leave, or showing vulnerability is weak. And for people whose insecurity, especially disorganized, fearful, avoidant, is rooted in clear trauma, therapies like EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, can be crucial for processing those traumatic memories so they stop hijacking the present.
Okay, therapy is a powerful route. But what about self-guided strategies? What can someone start doing on their own today?
Awareness is always step one. A radical increase in self-awareness. This means really paying attention, maybe journaling after arguments or moments of connection. What exactly triggered you? What thoughts went through your head? What did you feel in your body? What was your behavioral impulse to pursue, to withdraw, to shut down? Get specific about your personal script.
None of your pattern.
Yes. Second, actively practice emotional regulation. This isn't just calm down. It's learning specific techniques to manage overwhelming emotions without relying solely on your partner or withdrawing completely. Things like deep breathing exercises, mindfulness practices to stay present, grounding techniques like the 5-4-3-2-1 sense grounding when panic hits. Physical activity can also be huge for processing intense feelings.
So you learn to self-soothe more effectively.
Exactly. Third, and this takes conscious effort, actively rewrite internal scripts. When that automatic negative thought pops up, they didn't text back, they must be angry, losing interest, you have to catch it and challenge it. Question the evidence. Offer alternative, more generous interpretations. Remind yourself of times your partner was reliable. You're essentially doing internal CBT on yourself, challenging the IWM's assumptions.
It's like building a counter-narrative.
It is. And finally, consciously seek out and learn from secure models. Spend time with friends, family members, or mentors who seem to have secure attachment patterns. Observe how they communicate, how they handle disagreements, how they balance closeness and autonomy. Sometimes just seeing healthy relating modeled consistently can provide a powerful new template.
Okay. Lots to think about there. Let's wrap up.
Yeah.
So this deep dive has really shown, I think, how the architecture of our adult relationships, how we connect, how we fight, how we love, it's profoundly shaped by that early blueprint, that IWM. It's the hidden force often running the show.
But the crucial takeaway, the most hopeful piece from all this research, is that the blueprint isn't necessarily permanent. It's malleable. We have this amazing capacity for change, for building earned security. Understanding your pattern is step one, absolutely. But step two is action. Conscious, deliberate, sometimes difficult action. That's how the renovation happens.
Right. So we want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to chew on. We've seen how the past shapes the present, but we also know that earned secure parents are just as good at raising securely attached children as parents who were secure all along. That's huge. It means the cycle can be broken. So the question for you is, what's the single most important lesson, or maybe the one specific pattern, a go-to deactivating move you need to challenge, or a hyperactivating urge you need to resist? What's the one thing you need to really internalize today to start writing a more secure story for your future relationships, and maybe for the next generation too?
That's the work, isn't it? It takes real self-reflection, consistent effort, and the courage to seek out and build relationships built on that foundation of ARE, accessibility, responsiveness, and engagement. It's possible.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into connection, patterns, and the possibility of change. We'll see you next time.
It's the strength to build anew. It's the light to guide.
And that brings us to the end of our first episode of the season. My hope is that by identifying your attachment style, you can stop blaming yourself for your instincts and start understanding where they come from. Remember, your style isn't a life sentence. It's just a starting point for growth. Join me next week for our next episode, Beyond Hearing, the Art of Active Listening. We'll be moving from understanding yourself to understanding others. We'll explore practical techniques to make your partner feel truly heard, validated, and understood, even during a disagreement. If you're finding this new season valuable, please hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. And if you'd like to support the show, all the information for our donation link is in the show notes. As always, you can find all resources at yourjourneyyourtools.com and the app at yourjourneyyourtools.app. Thanks again for listening, and I'll catch you on your journey.